and is really, one of the strong points of the UK economy. So, yeah, I think there's examples in legal services, for example, where if a Chinese business is looking to invest into, say, the Middle East, and they're looking for lawyers who are experienced in providing the types of legal services that they require, then UK services are well positioned to support that type of activity.
China, as just like the UK, would love to have a peaceful global environment and very stable economic policies. Very nice talking with you.
Dive into the sports world with Sideline Story, our weekly podcast that brings you the most up-to-date game analysis and news from the latest sports action. Subscribe to Sideline Story on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you listen to your podcast.
Want to learn about world affairs in a more laid-back and accessible manner? Join insiders, experts, and analysts in the casual setting of the chat lounge to hear their personal experiences and opinions on major events and hot issues. Subscribe to Chat Lounge for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
GTN Radio. The difference. Now the news. Amongst the hunt, Chinese Premier Li Qiang has addressed the opening ceremony of the 20th China ASEAN Expo, which is underway in the city of Nanning, South China's Guangxi. Leaders from Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand were also in attendance. Gao Ang has more.
Boosting trade and economic cooperation between China and ASEAN, and then promoting the regional economic integration and the RCEP, China-ASEAN Free Trade Area, and the Belt and Road Initiative were high agenda for the ceremony. Trade is definitely one of the highlights of China and ASEAN cooperation. So China has been ASEAN's largest trading partner for 14 consecutive years, and the two sides have been each other's top trading partner for 3 years in a row. So the China-ASEAN Expo is actually seen as a very critical platform to boost trade, investment, and tourism between China and ASEAN.
The G77 plus China summit has wrapped up with the adoption of the Havana Declaration. Participants reached a consensus on the need of developing countries to close ranks to face current global challenges. Lei Xiangping reports from Havana.
There are 46 points in the declaration, but 3 highlights stand out. First, all representatives expressed their concern about the current crisis that developing countries are facing. They cited a fragile global economic outlook, increased pressure on food and energy, and rising inequalities. Secondly, all representatives reiterated their clear opposition to unilateral sanctions against the developing countries and reiterated the need to eliminate them immediately. Thirdly, the notion of building a community of shared future for humankind, which was proposed by the Chinese representatives, is written into this declaration.
A UN report says at least 11,300 people have died and another 10,000 remain missing from the coastal city of Derna, 1 week after Storm Daniel hit northeastern Libya. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says the flooding also left about 170 people dead elsewhere in the country. It says more than 40,000 people have been displaced in Libya. On Saturday, Libya began to receive some international relief supplies. Rescue teams from home and abroad are still working to search for survivors in the rubble. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has left Russia, concluding his 6-day trip. During his visit, Kim met with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Vostochny Cosmodrome Space Center in Russia's Far East on Wednesday. After a one-on-one session, the two leaders agreed to strengthen bilateral cooperation and extend further support to one another. On Friday, Kim also visited Russia's aviation facilities and inspected assembly workshops where Russian fighter jets are made. This was followed by a meeting with Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in Vladivostok on Saturday. Post-tropical cyclone Lee has made landfall in Canada's Nova Scotia province, leaving around 120,000 people without power. Lee has been bringing strong winds, coastal flooding, and heavy rains to parts of Atlantic Canada and the U.S. state of Maine. Reports say nearly 70,000 people in Maine were out of power as of late Saturday. In anticipation of the storm's impact, the Biden administration has issued an emergency declaration for Maine and Massachusetts, providing federal assistance for the states. China State Railway Group says it sold over 22 million train tickets on Friday, setting a new record for single-day ticket sales. Friday marks the pre-sale of train tickets for the first day of the Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day holidays. China is expected to see 190 million railway trips during the upcoming 12-day travel rush, which will last from September 27th to October the 8th. A wide-field telescope capable of surveying the entire sky from the northern hemisphere has entered into operation in northwest China. Measuring 2.5 meters in diameter, the Mozi Wide-Field Survey Telescope in Qinghai Province is now the largest time-domain survey facility in the northern hemisphere. The telescope was jointly developed by the University of Science and Technology of China and the Purple Mountain Observatory under the Chinese Academy of Sciences. In 2022, the telescope was nicknamed after the ancient Chinese philosopher Mozi, or Mencius, who is said to be the first in history to conduct optical experiments. The location of the telescope has an average altitude of about 4,000 meters. And that's the news. I'm Mozi.
Find out what the whole world is thinking in the agenda.
This week on the agenda, boiling point as extreme weather strikes across the globe. Are climate catastrophes the new normal? From floods in Libya and China to drought in Sri Lanka, not to mention heat waves and wildfires across much of Europe and North America, the summer of 2023 has highlighted the devastating impact of climate change like never before. It prompted UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres to declare we're no longer talking about global warming, but global boiling. So what can be done if these climate catastrophes are not to become the new normal? With me now is Nicholas Hagelberg, the Global Coordinator for Climate Change at the United Nations Environment Programme. July was likely the hottest the Earth has seen for about, I think, 120,000 years, leading the UN Secretary-General, as we heard there, to say that we've passed this era of global warming and that we're talking about global boiling. Is that why this summer has seen such weather extremes?
What we're seeing now is a combination of two parts. So one is the ever-growing concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And then we have just shifted from La Nina event that has been cooling the Pacific Ocean towards El Nino that started more or less in May. And that one is now causing the Pacific Ocean to increase in temperature. And those two events together has now led to the warmest July on record.
So let's talk about the science behind the ferocity in temperatures that we've been seeing, that we've been feeling. Is there any hope of reversing what seems to be a climate catastrophe?
So the kind of situation as we see it now with these events across the world from China to Brazil and US and Europe, we are likely to continue to see these in the foreseeable future. The good news is that we still have the opportunity, if and when we will reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, then the climate can stabilize into a new normal, which will not be too far from the climate that our human society has got used to and that we have built up around.
I want to talk about the net zero goals and this goal of 1.5 degrees. Is that really just wishful thinking now? Because nearly 2 years ago, a UNEP report said there was no credible pathway